Devil May Cry 1 tier list for the enemies. So every enemy in the game that's a non-boss enemy, we're gonna be ranking them today. Me as the epic god gamer DMC1 mastermind overlord, King Ghidorah of DMC1. I obviously have the objectively correct opinion, so if you ever are curious how good an enemy is in Devil May Cry 1, this is the video to reference. So we got our categories here, SSS. This means it's like as good as it gets. This is like a perfect enemy. And then everything below that is dog shit, basically. First ones first. We got Assaults. The reptilian looking motherfuckers. Clever Girl. Dinosaurs, basically. Essentially. Lizard Man from Soul Calibur 2. I gotta say, Assaults are not the least fun enemy to fight, but they are the most common enemy type that isn't really juggleable. Like, you can kind of juggle them, but they're not that fun, and definitely not very fun to fight with Ifrit, but can be quite enjoyable. They have a couple of attacks that are pretty dog shit. Only enemy you fight underwater. No, that's not true. You also fight Sin Scissors underwater, but these guys are way more fun to fight underwater than Scissors, that's for sure. Definitely the best underwater enemy. But I don't know, man. Lizard Man's moveset's looking a little whack. He got some dumbass attacks, and DMD, bro, they be super RNG, and the critical hit on them, every enemy in the game has a critical hit where you can kill them in like one hit basically, and the critical hit on these guys kind of sucks. You have to knock them over and then like helm breaker them from their ass, but you have to knock them over from behind, which makes it like really hard to do. It's like, it's very situational. I gotta say, these guys probably S tier. They're pretty solid, but definitely not the cream of the crop. All right, next up, we got Beelzebubs. Literally just what's underneath your refrigerator. These things are disgusting. Gave me nightmares as a kid, just like Regenerators from RE4. I'm gonna say, not a huge fan. Neither was Kamiya, apparently, because they don't even exist on any difficulty besides normal, right? Like, I think they're on easy as well, but hard and DMD, they just don't exist because they suck. They're like unreadable, can't really combo them. They're mad annoying. They hit you all the time when you didn't even do anything wrong. So I gotta say, F tier. Dog shit enemy. But probably, actually, definitely the worst enemy in the game. 100%. Next up, we got Nobodies. This is what happens when you Google your own name. Nothing shows up. Just Nobodies, right? These guys, probably like one of the coolest designs I've ever seen in a video game. Very interesting. Got a bunch of extra hands, some eyeballs and stuff. They're wearing these masks. Really cool gimmick, but honestly, I gotta say, pretty underwhelming. Not very fun to fight. They don't really react to anything you do unless it's a high time or a stinger. You can straight Inferno these fools and they'll just tank it. They have a absolute insanely large amount of health. And they're just not that fun. They got a nice loop, so you could just deal with them with a grenade gun snare combo, you know, give them a little schwerks, but outside of looping them, fighting them is really frustrating. So I gotta say, even though the mask gimmick where you break the mask and they remain small and stuff is really cool, conceptually, definitely a triple S tier enemy, but in actual gameplay, I gotta go with A tier. Not that great, right? Beelzebubs are inside some hardened DMD rooms if you backtrack. Okay, I've never done that before, so that's interesting. Next up, we got Death Scythe. This mini boss that becomes somewhat of a regular enemy on the higher difficulties, his design is fucking sick. Like, this dude is metal as hell. Look at him. He's got 2 scythes, and his moveset is really cool, but he does have the problem of being one of those DMC enemies that just fucking flies away and flies through walls and shit. I gotta say, of the two, with Death Scythe and Death Scissor, Death Scythe is definitely worse. He's definitely less fun, and it's just like, you know, Devil May Cry is a game about combat. You're trying to like get stuff going. You're trying to get stylish, get fired up. But this guy, he's trying to fucking fly away. He's trying to sail the 7 seas. He's trying to find the fucking One Piece like he's Luffy. Oh, my face game showed up. But yeah, he's out here running away, and I can't stand for it. It's not good. I hate it. So I gotta say, while conceptually really cool, not fun to fight at all. Probably my least favorite mini boss to fight. I'm gonna put it in D tier. The best enemies are the ones that refuse to fight you, obviously. Shadows. All right, Shadow, the demon kitty. Gotta say, triple S here, easily. Definitely the best mini boss for sure. Super fun. It's got a cool gimmick. You know, like you got to shoot him until the core comes out, and then you melee him. Very formidable. Even if you're really good at the game, like you got to focus when you're fighting shadows because they're really engaging and really fun. And also their AI is very readable and very scriptable, so you can counter them in good ways if you know what you're doing. So definitely the most rewarding. Only downside of this enemy, it's got RNG health, but that really only matters for speedruns. And if you're fighting multiple at the same time, which does happen a lot on DMD, it can be really annoying when Dante switches targets when you don't want him to. But I don't really think that's necessarily a fault of the enemy as much as it is a fault of the auto lock on for Devil May Cry, right? So I gotta say, easily triple S tier. Best mini boss in the game by far. Definitely Shadow, the goated best mini boss in the game. Maybe best enemy in the game. We'll see how the tier list goes, how it continues onward. Incentivizes you to play smart and have to adapt, and he feels kind of like an equal when you fight him. And so that's what makes him so fun. So next up, Fetishes. We got the super powered up variant of the Marionettes. So these flame wheel femboys, as it were. They're basically just marionettes, except for have a lot more health and have some interesting moves, very different than the other marionettes. Honestly, now that I think about it, not too different. So basically just a reskinned marionette. What I like about these enemies is that they're the only enemy type where you could have two different enemy types in the same room. You might not know this, but enemies in Devil May Cry 1, they take up a lot of memory. And OG PS2, like 2001, they didn't have a lot of ways of consolidating memory. So there's only one enemy type per room. So like you'll never see a fetish and a shadow in the same room, or like a sin scissor and an assault in the same room. It just doesn't happen because it's a restriction of the game's memory limit. Same reason why you can't switch weapons on the fly. You have to use the menu. But Fetishes changed up this variation a lot by using the same skeleton as the marionettes. So you could have like marionettes and all their variations and fetishes in the same room, which adds a lot to the dynamic. I think it's very fun. Them as themselves, they're not anything crazy special, but they're not bad. They're very fun and they're juggleable. Being able to juggle them and do shotgun jump cancels and stuff makes them quite enjoyable. And every weapon that you can use against them is enjoyable. So I think they're pretty great. Got to be S tier for sure. Higher than assaults, definitely, but not quite triple S tier. Next, we got Frosts. Conceptually, Frosts are probably the coolest thing in the game. Like these things are they're assaults, but made of ice. And they're fucking legendary. They're really, really cool. However, fighting them in the actual game is not that fun. Because they have this attack where, not an attack, they have a move where they encase themselves in ice and hide like little fucking pussies, little beta bitches. And that'd be fine because you could hit them out of the ice, right? Like stop them from healing. Right? The ice heals them and lets them recharge their arm so they actually get more HP back. Because when you beat them up enough, their big arm breaks. And then they can't do some of the attacks that they'd normally be able to do, which is a really cool dynamic. But when they try to heal and get their arm back, the hitbox is like too big, so it pushes you away, and you like actually can't hit him while he's healing, and so you can just loop healing over and over and over again, and you can't hit the motherfucker because the hitbox is like way too big. So that sucks. Kind of whack. The attacks and the animations are phenomenal and very cool. But fighting this fool with Alistair is basically impossible. Even with like all the upgrades and stuff, it's just like not fun. You could only fight Frost with Ifrit. If you fight him with Alistair, it's just not a good time. But I gotta say, easily S tier. Probably just under Fetishes. I don't think they're quite as good because, you know, being limited to only using one of the two weapons, not that fun. I'd like to see a little bit more versatility. I'd like maybe just buff Alistair a little bit. Ifrit completely demolishes them. Like if you do a Meteor and an Inferno or a Kick-13 and an Inferno, they just die instantly. So it's kind of fun. Adds to the puzzle element of the enemies in DMC1. Next up, we got another mini boss, the Death Scythe. The Scissor, I mean. Much better variation of the death enemies. Here you got the two mini bosses, the Death Scythe and the Death Scissors. The Death Scissor is way more fun. Like, way more fun. It's not even close. This dude does the corkscrew and has that really telegraphed audio cue. He has definitely a lot less attacks than the Scythe enemy, but he's way more fun to fight. Again, can't really use Ifrit on him. It would be really difficult. I honestly have never even tried. But, you know, really, really cool aesthetically. He's got a nice set piece when he's first introduced on hard and DMD. And he's fun to fight, you know. Doesn't quite run away the same way the other translucent enemies are, the ones that go through walls. So he's definitely the better of the two, but still not great. I'd say this is probably S tier, but at the very bottom, or maybe at the top of A tier. We're gonna put it at the top of A tier. We'll level out the list a little bit. Next up, we got Kyklopses. These motherfuckers, they're just spiders. They're literally phantom, but has, you know, less HP and rock themed instead of lava themed. They're okay. I gotta say, Secret Mission 5, where you have to get these guys to kill each other by shooting each other, definitely brings them down like a point or two. Because that secret mission alone is just awful. And every time I see these guys, I get PTSD flashbacks from that secret mission. So, gotta say, definitely not SSS tier. Next to that. I've never really tried fighting them with the Ifrit very much, but I feel like it would be okay. Not too bad. They do this thing where they like iframe. Phantom does this too, where they like iframe and then you can't stun them again, but they still take damage. Not a fan of that at all. But overall, pretty decent enemy. Quite fun. They show up very, very sparingly. So, you know, them not having the most versatility is not super bad because, you know, they're rare. I'd say probably B tier. Solid B tier. Definitely like the middle of the road. Nothing special. All right, Marionettes. Now, the Marionettes, I got, you know, I'm of two minds on the Marionettes. On one hand, they're really cool and easily the most versatile enemies in the game. Every time you encounter them, different things. You know, they got different amounts of health. They got different weapons. You know, sometimes they spawn in different areas. It's very fun. And they're also the best for combo potential. You could juggle them. You could jump cancel them. You know, both Ifrit and Alistair are really good. And every single gun is really good. And it's just quite fun to fight. The only downsides, really, are that they're just... I can't think of any downsides from a non-speedrunner perspective. As a speedrunner, I can rant about them all day. I hate these motherfuckers. But, you know, just from a regular enemy design perspective, honestly, it's hard for me to argue that they're not triple S tier. They're pretty great. They're really well designed. They aesthetically super pleasing, and also all of their attacks are really interesting and pretty telegraphed. And they have the most variety of any combat encounter in the game. So, you know, I'm gonna have to say they're triple S tier. I hate to say it, but as a speedrunner, I hate to say it. Not as good as Shadow, but gotta be triple S tier. So often forgotten, but lest we not forget, Blue Dante. He's got to be in every game. Sometimes his name is Virgil. Sometimes his name is a Plasma. We got Plasmas here. Basically just a reskinned Dante, but also he could turn into a bat. These enemies, pretty cool. I like them. They have this gimmick where if you attack them and don't kill them fast enough, they'll split, which is a nice, fun, engaging way to fight them. It can be a little bit annoying, but you know, most of the time, if that happens, it's your fault. They do have this thing though where they'll just randomly dodge your attacks. I only find that to be a problem in speedrunning, so I won't really say that that's necessarily a detriment to them. They're really cool design aesthetically, and they have a really, really cool introduction cutscene. Overall, they're a lot like a puzzle enemy. You know, once you figure them out, they die really fast, and then you don't have to really fight them that often. And they're used very sparingly. So I gotta say that's an S tier, right? That's S tier. I'd say above Assaults, but not above Frosts. I definitely think that Frosts are more engaging of an enemy. They're more of a mini boss. Oh my god, bro. Speaking of Frosts, that Frost introduction cutscene where you get hit because it's like a fucking less than human reaction time startup. Holy shit. I just tilted myself thinking about it. But, you know, besides that, great enemy. All right. Sargasso, the skulls, you know, skull emoji. Now, honestly, not much to say here. They're kind of just a nothing enemy. One of the only enemy types. These enemies are so boring that they don't even take up enough RAM to make it so that there can only be one enemy type in a room. This is the only time you'll see a regular enemy and a boss in the same room, and that's inside of Nightmare. You'll see the Sargasso and a boss at the same time. And I think that's pretty cool. And they're used, again, really sparingly and kind of just a bit of a time waster. You know, not bad, not good. Yeah, dead ass. Ain't no way. Like, skull emojis. I think they're pretty cool. Nothing special. Then they got a cool platforming secret mission. I gotta say, A tier. You know, not annoying ever. Got some cool fights, but nothing special. All right. Next up, we got Sin Scissors. Go to the barber shop, get the lineup. You know, Dante getting the lineup. Gotta say, enemies that go through walls. Developers, if you're listening. Enemies that go through walls. Stop. That's basically all I have to say. You know, they're cool, have some really great audio design, really cool aesthetic, but like, I will say they're a lot better than like Fall and DMC3. You know, they actually come and fight you for the most part. And I really like their insta-kill counter where you like parry the scissor and then shoot them in the face. I think that's really cool. But I gotta say, man, the fact that they can just randomly block you is mad annoying. And you basically can't fight them with Ifrit, which does suck. I'm noticing a trend here. A lot of these enemies you can't fight with Ifrit. I gotta do an Ifrit only playthrough. I would like to see this. But yeah, enemies randomly flying away from you and not engaging in combat, not fun. But very cool enemy. I think, thankfully, used pretty sparingly. That's the nice thing about DMC1 is there's a lot of enemy types, and there's so many that you only will see like one or two of the same enemy type per playthrough, which is pretty dope. I respect that. That's fun. I gotta say, they are definitely A tier, but I think above the Death Scissor. Because I think they're just more versatile. You know, you don't have to be stuck in a single like caged in arena. The camera angles are usually better when fighting these enemies. And last but not least, we have the Scythes. These guys are literally the exact same thing as Sin Scissors, but way less annoying. So everything I said about Sin Scissors is true here, except for these are way more fun to fight because they don't randomly block you. So again, I think just S tier or A tier, but just above the other ones. So that's the enemy tier list. I will say, surprisingly, almost all of the enemies in the game are really sick. They're like really fun to fight and really good. The only enemies I actually loathe fighting, I hate fighting, are Death Scythes and the Beelzebubs. Besides that, honestly, like, give me 2 or 3 of these a playthrough of any of these, and I'm down. I'll fight them. They're okay, you know. Actually, looking at it again, I think I got to take Nobodies down to B tier, better than the Kyklopses. I don't think it's quite. They are quite annoying to fight. I would say that the Sargasso are more fun to fight than the Nobodies, so this has got to move down a tier. But heavy leaning on the pyramid towards the triple S tier. I was honestly thinking that there might be more triple S's, but you know, you don't want the bell curve to be too far on the highest here. But yeah, I gotta say, this is the definitive voice crack. This is the definitive Devil May Cry enemy tier list by yours truly, WaifuRuns. Next time, maybe we'll do bosses.